Okay, so what we'll be doing for today is how do we do a one sample Z test and one sample T test. Okay, so one sample test is actually what I tend to always call as the quality control questions. Okay. So let me just repeat. I tend to call one sample T test or Z test as a form of quality control questions. So why is that so? The kind of question that comes up or the kind of thing that we're trying to do is something like this. Okay, let's say if the label for instant noodles is, let's say, 100 grams per packet. Okay, then what you're doing as a QC to find out whether there's a packing machine produces instant noodles of 100 grams per packet. So this is the kind of question that we have, which means that your null hypothesis is that the average weight equals to 100 grams. Okay, alternate hypothesis is not equals to 100 grams. Average weight is not equals to 100 grams. Okay, so based on this, let's get some data. We call this as the weight. And let's say we just randomize, we have maybe 10 packets of instant noodles. Okay, so let me randomize something somewhere between 98, 980 to 1020, but we want to divide it by 10, so that gives us some numbers. Okay, so let's say we have 15 packets. So copy it, paste it in again. So now I will show you how to do a t-test. I mean, I have to reduce this a little bit. I'll show you how to do a t-test. Now we realize that if you go to data analysis tab, there is actually no one sample test. There's no test for one sample. So we have to use a two sample test and we have to trick Excel into doing it. So how do we do that? The easiest way I know is just something like this. You have your weight, this is your data. We want to create a dummy. Okay, this dummy is just to mimic another sample, nothing more than that. And what is this dummy? You can put the dummy, or you can call the dummy as your null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is 100. Right? The null hypothesis here is 100. Here's some other color. So you take 100 throughout. Right? That's all. Then what happened is you just go to data analysis. Your two samples t-test, there is equal variance and unequal variance. Now, quite obviously, if you look at it, if we just do the variance, var.s, check the variances of the weight and the dummy. You know, because dummy is all 0. So, you know, we will kind of be a bit more certain if we choose unequal variance. Okay, we tend to go with unequal variance in this case. So let's choose unequal variance and we see what happens. Sample 1 will be the weight. Sample 2 or variable 2 will be the dummy. And that's it. Because we select the labels, we click the labels, output range. We put output range in D6, for example. So we run it. And voila. That is actually how we do a one sample test. So basically we're asking, we perform a one sample test by mimicking whether is our data equals to our dummy. Okay, when our dummy is the null hypothesis here. So in this case, because the p-value is pretty high, we say that we to reject the null hypothesis. So that's it. How to do a one sample test for using t-test. One sample t-test by trying to use two sample tests and mimic it into a one sample test. The next one is we want to do a z-test. Now, z-test is a little bit more tricky. You go to data analysis tab and you find that there is a z-test two sample for means. Okay, so the last one. Click OK. Now, variable one range, you can put the variable one range here and the variable two range. Okay, if I do the same thing, label, put the output range onto, let's say, I. If I click OK, I'll give you error, get error. It says that variable one, variance one must be greater than 0. Now, it means that Excel needs something on this both the variable one rate variance and the variable two variance. So what you do is you have to type in the variance yourself. There is no way to click the variance. You have to type it. So it's 1.37257.1. Now, obviously, our dummy, because all of them is 100, the variance is going to be 0. But Excel does not accept it, because in the real life data, your dummy, your variance will never be 0. So if I put 0, Excel will not accept it. Must be greater than 0. So how do I trick Excel into doing things again? I'll just put a very, very small number. You know, some very small number. Okay, just to mimic some form of variance. That's it. Okay, then it will work. Okay. You realize that the two-tailed test, the p-value is very similar. So you can even look at what happens when you reduce let's say for z-test, for z-test again, let's repeat, and let's say we put our variance 2 to be even lesser. Okay, we say that it is 1e minus 9. So 1 times 10 to the power of minus 9. And we see what happens. Okay, you realize that it should have a little bit of difference, but the difference is not great. So once the dummy variance, the known variance becomes small, very small. The smaller you get, it will not make any difference. Okay, so essentially this is your one sample t-test using, so we actually we are quite tricking two samples z-test or t-test into performing one sample z-test or t-test. Okay. This is the only way you can do it in Excel. You have to trick Excel into doing it by having a dummy variable. Okay, so this is the easiest way that you can do it. All right. So that's all for today. Hopefully you can get it. See you.